On Christmas Eve, the only gift my father gave me was a folder slammed onto the dining table. Inside was a legal document titled Copyright Transfer Agreement. My father, Otis Allen, pointed a finger in my face. "Sign it, Cole. Sign over the rights to your Green Lotus design to Dante, or we cut your tuition for Cornell effective immediately." My mother didn't even look up from her wine glass. "Your brother needs this Pritzker Prize more than you do," she added. "He's the face of the company. You're just the hands." I looked at the people who were supposed to protect me. I didn't offer a rebuttal. I didn't calculate the odds of a negotiation. I simply arranged my features into a smile of absolute compliance and said 2 words. "All right." By the next morning, my room was empty, my transfer was approved, and the Allen Empire was already burning to the ground. Before I tell you how I engineered their collapse, please leave a comment letting me know which city you're following from. I really want to know who is listening to this story. To understand why I blew up my family's legacy, you have to understand the architecture of our lie. For the past 4 years, my brother Dante has been the face of Allen Corporation. He is the charmer, the negotiator, the one who looks good in a $3,000 suit shaking hands with city council members. I am the one in the basement. Literally. While Dante was out popping champagne bottles at the 40 Under 40 gala, I was sitting in a windowless studio at our parents' estate, staring at AutoCAD screens until my eyes burned. Every award on Dante's shelf, every magazine cover, every groundbreaking design that Allen Corp released in the last half-decade began with my hands. People ask me why I stayed. Why did I let them use me for so long? The answer is simple and terrifying. It is the boiling frog syndrome. If you drop a frog in boiling water, it jumps out immediately. But if you put it in tepid water and raise the temperature degree by degree, it will cook to death without ever knowing it is in danger. That is exactly what my family did to me. It didn't start with grand theft. It started when I was 16. "Just fix this sketch for your brother," my father would say. Then it became, "Just finish this rendering, he has a date." Then it was, "Just do his final project, he's too stressed." By the time I was at Cornell, it was an unspoken contract. I was the engine, Dante was the paint job. They paid my tuition, gave me a generous allowance, and told me I was contributing to the family empire. I rationalized the obscurity. I calculated that anonymity was a fair exchange for resources. I told myself it was a temporary foundation. But the water was getting hotter, and I was too busy working to notice my skin was peeling. The Green Lotus project was supposed to be different. This was my senior thesis for Cornell, my masterpiece. It was a sustainable urban housing complex designed to revitalize low-income neighborhoods without gentrification. I spent 8 months on the structural calculations alone. I poured my soul into the ventilation systems, the communal gardens, the cost-effective materials. I kept it on a private server, locked away from the Allen Corp network. This was mine. It was the one thing I wasn't going to give them. It was the one thing that proved I was Cole Allen, the architect, not just Cole Allen, Dante's little brother. But the thing about parasites is that they are never satisfied with just a little blood. They want the whole host. I remember coming home for winter break, exhausted but proud, ready to finalize my submission for the university review. I walked into the house, and the first thing I saw was a bottle of Dom Perignon on the kitchen counter. My mother was humming a Christmas carol, arranging flowers. She looked at me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early," she said. "Dante is in his office. He has big news." I should have known then. I should have felt the water boiling. But I just put down my bag and walked toward the office, unknowingly stepping into the moment that would shatter my entire reality. The door to Dante's office was ajar. Inside, the room smelled of expensive leather and aged scotch, the scent of unearned success. Dante wasn't there, but his ego was plastered on every surface. Framed magazine covers, awards for buildings he couldn't sketch to save his life, and right in the center of his mahogany desk, a thick, spiral-bound portfolio. It was stamped with the gold seal of the American Institute of Architects. The label read, "Submission for the AIA, Emerging Professionals Award. Candidate, Dante Allen." My stomach turned over, a physical reflex, like missing a step on a staircase in the dark. I knew that award. It was the most prestigious recognition for architects under 30 in the country. It was the launch pad for a legendary career. And Dante, who struggled to calculate the slope of a handicap ramp, had submitted an entry. I walked over to the desk. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a strange, cold numbness spreading through my fingertips as I reached for the cover. I opened the portfolio. The title page stared back at me in bold, sans serif type, The Green Lotus, A Vision for Sustainable Urban Density, by Dante Allen. The air left the room. It wasn't just a similar title. It wasn't just a similar concept. It was my file, my senior thesis. I turned the page. There was my introduction, word for word. The next spread revealed my rendering of the central atrium, with the specific rainwater filtration system I had spent 3 weeks modeling. I flipped faster, looking for a difference, a change. Anything that would make this less of a violation. But it was all there. The specific bamboo composite materials I had selected. The load-bearing calculations for the cantilevered balconies. Even the small typo on page 42 regarding the thermal insulation value that I had meant to correct before my final review. He hadn't just stolen the idea. He had stolen the file directly from my private server, changed the name on the title block, and printed it on high-gloss paper. This wasn't plagiarism. This was identity theft. He was going to stand on a stage and accept an award for a building he didn't understand, while I would be left with nothing. If I tried to submit my thesis now, Cornell would flag it as plagiarism of Dante's work. He had time-stamped his theft with an official submission. A shadow fell across the desk. I looked up. Dante was standing in the doorway, holding a crystal tumbler of whiskey. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed, like I was a maid who had touched something she wasn't supposed to. "Hey, Cole," he said, his voice smooth and unbothered. "I was going to show you that later. Pretty impressive printing job, right? The colors really pop on this stock." I stared at him. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. He wasn't even trying to hide it. To him, my work was just another asset of the Allen Corporation, like the office furniture or the company car. Something he was entitled to use because he was the golden child, and I was just the ghost in the machine. "You stole my thesis," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat and distant. "You hacked my server, and you stole the Green Lotus." Dante took a sip of his drink and walked into the room, leaning casually against a bookshelf. "Stole is such a harsh word, little brother. I prefer to think of it as leveraging company resources. Besides, who's going to build it? You? You're a student. I have the investors. I have the platform. I'm doing you a favor. I'm making sure your little drawing actually gets built." He smiled, that practiced, camera-ready smile that had fooled the entire city. But for the first time, I didn't see my big brother. I saw a thief in a $3,000 suit, and I realized that the water wasn't just boiling, it was evaporating, and I was about to burn. Chapter 4. Dinner of Wolves. Dinner was served at 7:30 sharp, prime rib, rosemary potatoes, and a silence so thick you could choke on it. The dining room was dressed for Christmas, with silver candelabras and garlands of fresh pine, but it felt like a courtroom. I sat across from Dante. He was checking emails on his phone, the blue light reflecting in his wineglass. My parents sat at the heads of the table, eating with the mechanical precision of people who had long ago decided that feelings were inefficient. "I want the file back," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the sound of silverware scraping against china. "And I want you to withdraw the submission to the A." A. Dante didn't look up. He scrolled, tapped, and took a bite of potato. "Don't be dramatic, Cole. It's Christmas Eve." "You stole my intellectual property," I said, louder this time. "That thesis is my degree. It's my career." My father, Otis, set his knife down. The sound rang out like a gavel. "It is our career, Cole," he corrected. "Everything under this roof belongs to the Allen Corporation. That includes the food you're eating, the clothes on your back, and yes, the ideas in your head." My gaze shifted to my mother. Surely, she would see this. She was the one who framed my acceptance letter to Cornell. "Mom?" He took the Green Lotus. He didn't even change the font. Patricia Allen sighed. dabbing the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin. She looked at me with a weary disappointment, as if I had spilled juice on a white rug. Cole, darling, look at the bigger picture. Dante has the network, he has the charm. If he wins this award, the company stock goes up 10 points. If you win, what happens? You get a plaque? We need the stock price more than you need a plaque. It's not about a plaque, I said, my hands clenching into fists under the table. It's about the fact that I designed it. I did the math. I drew the lines. Dante finally looked up. He laughed, a short, sharp bark. Nobody cares about the math, Cole. They care about the story. And let's be honest, who are they going to believe? Me, the CEO who revitalized the waterfront? Or you, the kid who still needs his daddy to pay his tuition? That's enough, Dad said. He reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder. He slid it across the mahogany surface toward me. It stopped right next to my plate. We are done discussing this. Inside is a copyright transfer agreement. It backdates the creation of the Green Lotus design to Dante, 3 years ago. It states that you acted merely as a drafting assistant. I stared at the folder. You want me to sign away my future? I want you to secure this family's future, Dad said, his voice dropping an octave. You will sign that document tonight. If you do, we continue to pay your tuition at Cornell. We continue your allowance. You graduate debt-free. He leaned forward, his eyes cold and hard as flint. If you don't sign, the funding stops now. You'll be withdrawn from Cornell by Monday, and I will personally call the dean and tell him that you plagiarized Dante's work. I have the resources to make sure you never work in this industry. Not even as a draftsman. I looked around the table, my brother, smirking behind his wineglass. My mother, examining her manicure. My father, holding the pen out to me like a weapon. There was no love here. There was only leverage. They didn't see a son. They saw a liability that needed to be managed. So that's it, I said, feeling a strange clarity wash over me. Sign or starve. It's business, Cole, Dante said, winking. Nothing personal. I locked my eyes on the Mont Blanc pen, then the folder, and in that moment, the fear that had controlled me for 4 years evaporated. They thought they had backed me into a corner. They didn't realize they had just cut the only leash that was holding me back. I picked up the heavy Mont Blanc pen. I didn't hesitate. I scrawled my signature on the bottom line of the copyright transfer agreement, pushing the folder back toward my father. All right, I said. You win. I'll pack my things and go back to school. The tension in the room snapped like a cut wire. My mother let out a breath she had been holding. Dante clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture that was meant to be brotherly but felt like a conqueror patting his horse. Smart choice, Cole, he said. We'll wire your tuition in the morning. Don't worry about the gala tomorrow. You can stay here and rest. You look tired. I walked up the grand staircase to my room, listening to the sound of corks popping downstairs. They were celebrating their victory. They were toasting to the successful acquisition of their latest asset, my soul. But they made one fatal calculation error. They assumed I signed that paper because I was defeated. I signed it because I needed them to look away for exactly 1 hour. I locked my bedroom door and opened my laptop. I didn't start packing clothes. I started packing data. I logged into the Allen Corporation's private server. My access was still active. Of course it was. Why would they change the password? In every war, the most fatal weakness is not a lack of money or firepower. It is the hubris of the winner. Dante and my parents were so convinced of their own superiority, so certain that I was nothing more than a spineless draftsman, that it never occurred to them I might bite back. They believed I was too dependent on their money to risk biting the hand that fed me. History has proven time and again that the most confident king is the easiest to assassinate. They left the gate to the castle wide open because they didn't believe the peasant knew how to hold a sword. I navigated to the hidden root folder of the Green Lotus project. Dante had copied the final PDF, but he hadn't touched the metadata. I downloaded the entire edit history. Every keystroke, every timestamp from 2 years ago, but that wasn't the kill shot. The kill shot was the time-lapse. For my senior thesis, I had installed a screen recording script that captured a frame of my work every 10 minutes for 18 months. I compiled it into a 60-second video, It showed the Green Lotus growing from a blank white screen to a complex architectural marvel, line by line, layer by layer. And in the bottom right corner of every frame, clear as day, was my system clock and my user login, C. Allen, student, Cornell. I attached the video file to a new email. I added the metadata logs. Then I drafted the recipients list. The first address was the Ethics Committee of the American Institute of Architects. The second was the Board of Directors of Allen Corp. But the third address was the most important. Elena.Vance@vancecapital.com. Elena Vance was the keynote guest for tomorrow's Christmas gala. She was the shark investor Dante was trying to woo for a $50 million injection. She was also a Cornell architecture alumna who was legendary for her hatred of intellectual property theft. I didn't hit send. I set the scheduler. Delivery time. Tomorrow, 8:15 p.m. EST. Exactly 15 minutes after Dante was scheduled to take the stage for his keynote speech. I closed my laptop and finally allowed myself to exhale. They wanted a show? I was going to give them a show. I turned off the lights and lay down on the bed, listening to my family laugh downstairs, blissfully unaware that I had just set a timer on a bomb beneath their feet. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of black ties and sequins. From the live stream feed on my laptop in my dorm room, 300 miles away, it looked like a coronation. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto the heads of the city's elite. My parents were in the front row, radiating the smug satisfaction of people who believed they had successfully buried their secrets. And there was Dante, standing at the podium, bathed in a spotlight that cost more than my entire tuition. He looked the part of the visionary genius. His suit was tailored to the millimeter. He clicked a remote, and the rendering of the Green Lotus filled the massive LED screen behind him. The crowd gasped. It was a beautiful design. I knew it was beautiful because I had spent sleepless nights making sure the shadows hit the glass facade at exactly the right angle. The Green Lotus is not just a building, Dante said, his voice dropping to a practiced hush. It is a philosophy. When I sat down at my drafting table 2 years ago, staring at a blank page, I knew I wanted to create something that breathed. Every line you see here came from a place of deep personal struggle and inspiration. I watched him mime the action of drawing with his hand. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. The investors were nodding. My father was beaming. They had pulled it off. They had erased me. Then, a hand went up in the VIP section. The room went quiet. It was Elena Vance. She didn't wait for a microphone. She stood up, a terrifying figure in a sharp white suit. Mr. Allen, she projected, her voice cutting through the room. The structural integrity of the cantilevered balconies relies on a very specific bamboo composite. I'm curious about the thermal bridging calculations you use to prevent condensation in this climate. Your report mentions a coefficient of 0.4, but standard bamboo is usually 0.6. How did you achieve that reduction? Dante froze. He blinked. I could see the panic flaring behind his eyes. He didn't know what a thermal bridge was. He didn't know the coefficient because I had manually calculated it based on a proprietary treatment process I had researched in a Japanese architectural journal. Well, Dante stammered, loosening his tie slightly. That is a great question, Elena. The technical team handles the minutiae. I focus on the vision, the soul of the building. The soul doesn't keep the building standing, Mr. Allen, Elena said, her eyes narrowing. The math does. And if you drew every line, you should know the math. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My father started to stand up to intervene, but he was interrupted by a sound. It was a synchronized chime. A notification sound, then another, then 50, then 200. It was 8:15. Every phone in the room lit up simultaneously. The board members checked their pockets, Elena checked her tablet, and the massive LED screen behind Dante flickered. The beautiful rendering of the Green Lotus vanished. In its place, a video player appeared. Dante turned around, confused. Technical difficulties? He laughed nervously into the microphone. If we could just... The video started playing. It was my time-lapse. It played at high speed, a blank white screen, then a grid, then the first lines of the foundation, then the walls rising, day by day. Month by month, the video sped through 2 years of creation in 60 seconds. And at the bottom of the screen, burning like a brand, was the timestamp. January, 2 years ago. And the user ID, C. Allen, student, Cornell. The room fell into a dead silence. The only sound was the whirring of the projector fan and Dante's heavy breathing into the microphone. He stood up there, dwarfed by the undeniable proof of his fraud playing on a 40-foot screen. He wasn't the visionary anymore. He was just a thief in a spotlight. The collapse of the Allen dynasty happened in real time, broadcast in high definition. On my screen, I watched the ballroom descend into a frenzy that was almost beautiful in its destruction. It wasn't a riot, it was an exodus. The investors, the city council members, the potential clients, they didn't scream, they simply turned their backs. It was a collective rejection, a silent vote of no confidence that was louder than any shout. Elena Vance was the first to move. She looked at Dante, who was frantically signaling the tech crew to cut the feed, and she didn't just look disappointed, she looked disgusted. She picked up her clutch and walked to the edge of the stage. "Vance Capital does not invest in thieves," she said, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "The deal is off. And Mr. Allen, expect a call from our legal team regarding the breach of our due diligence agreement." That was the first domino. The $50 million injection that was supposed to save the company vanished in 10 seconds. My father, Otis, was already on his phone, his face a mask of purple rage. I could read his lips through the pixelated feed. He was screaming at his PR team, but there is no spin doctor in the world who can fix a live-streamed execution of character. Then came the second notification. I had timed it perfectly. Dante's phone, which he was gripping like a lifeline, buzzed with a priority alert. It wasn't a text. It was the official digital correspondence from the American Institute of Architects Ethics Council. I had sent them the evidence packet at the same time as the video. I watched Dante look down at the screen. I saw the moment the words hit him. Notice of immediate suspension and permanent revocation proceedings. The email would also outline the civil penalties for fraudulent submission to a federal grant program associated with the award of fine totaling $315,000. Dante dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a feedback screech that made everyone wince. He looked at our parents, his eyes wide and terrified, a child looking for a place to hide. But there was nowhere to hide. The screen behind him was still looping my work, frame by frame, proving his incompetence over and over again. "It's a mistake!" Dante yelled, but his voice was thin and cracking without the amplification. "He hacked the system. Cole hacked the system." Nobody was listening. My mother, Patricia, was staring at her phone, watching the stock ticker. The market was closed, but the after-hours trading sentiment for Allen Corp had plummeted off a cliff. The value of their shares, the source of their power, the reason they had sacrificed their youngest son, was evaporating. "You idiot!" I heard my father hiss at Dante, forgetting the cameras, forgetting the public. "You didn't check the metadata? You told me you scrubbed the file." "I thought he was stupid," Dante screamed back, pointing at the empty air where he imagined I was. "I thought he wouldn't notice." I closed my laptop. I didn't need to watch the rest. I didn't need to see security escort them out or watch the paparazzi swarm them like sharks sensing blood. The message had been delivered. They wanted me to be a ghost? Fine. I had haunted them. And just like any house built on a graveyard, the Allen Corporation had finally succumbed to the spirits they tried to bury. 6 months later, the snow had melted in Ithaca, replaced by the vivid green of spring. I stood on the podium in the auditorium of Cornell University, the weight of a glass trophy heavy and cool in my hands. The inscription didn't say Allen Corporation. It said Cole Allen, Pritzker Emerging Scholar. The applause was loud, but for the first time in my life, it felt real. It wasn't manufactured by a PR team. It wasn't bought with a donation. It was earned. In the front row, Elena Vance was clapping the loudest. She had not only exposed my brother, she had become the first seed investor in my independent firm. As for the Allen Empire, it is no longer an empire. It is a cautionary tale. The lawsuits from the investors bled my parents dry. They were forced to sell the estate to pay the settlement fees. Dante is currently unhireable in any firm in North America. The last I heard, He was managing a rental car branch in Jersey City, a job where he doesn't have to draw anything but a contract. They tried to call me, of course. My mother left voicemails crying about family loyalty. My father sent emails threatening legal action, then begging for a loan. I deleted them all without listening. I didn't block them out of anger. I blocked them because I had work to do. There is a philosophy I have come to live by: the justice of the sower. The sweetest revenge is not merely destroying your enemy's life. It is building a better one from the ashes. I didn't take the prize money and buy a sports car to show off. I took the Green Lotus design and broke ground on a real affordable housing project in the South Bronx. I walked out of the auditorium and looked at the construction site across the river where the first steel beams of my design were rising against the sky. It wasn't a monument to ego, it was a home for 300 families who needed one. For years, I was a ghost haunting my own life, sketching dreams for someone else to steal. But as I watched the crane lift a girder into place, I realized I wasn't invisible anymore. I was the architect of my own fate. And for the first time, the foundation was solid. If you were in my shoes, would you answer that phone call from your parents? Or would you keep building? Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with anyone who needs to be reminded that the truth is the only foundation worth building on. Take care of yourselves.